Well, my life has been changed. I've seen Walt Disney. We're back at Disneyland. And I'm not talking about statue Walt. I'm talking about robot Walt. Today, as I stand here, it is July 16th, 2025. One day, well, really just a few hours from the official 70th anniversary of Disneyland. And on that day, tomorrow, the brand new show, Walt Disney, A Magical Life, will officially debut to the public right here in the Opera House. And it is going to be a very big deal. Just a couple of days ago, they released the very first images of the new animatronic Walt Disney that's part of the show. No warning, no spoiler alert. The images took the internet by storm, and there's no way to sugarcoat this. A lot of people were pretty unhappy with the way Walt Disney looked. Now, I was preparing to come here tomorrow morning for the 70th anniversary, get in line, try to get that virtual queue to see the show. I wanted to reserve judgment until I could see it with my own eyes, right? Because those videos, those first preview images were shot from pretty low, weird angles, the opposite of MySpace angles, you know? I didn't know what to think or how to feel. I'll see it on the 70th anniversary. And then this morning, I got a text from a good friend of mine inviting me in for a preview of the new show, Walt Disney, A Magical Life. And there was no way I was going to turn it down. So earlier today, we made our way down to the park. We heard that Walt was having some technical issues, and so the shows would be delayed just a little bit. What it was a Club 33 preview of the show. So Club 33 members and their invited guests, which included me and the lovely, beautiful Miss Allie here. But eventually, the time came. We heard Walt was back online, and speaking of lines, quite a lot of Club 33 members and their guests lined up to see the show, to see old Walt Disney. Hi, Goofy. How you doing there? And we were among them. Now, at first, they told me, oh, I don't think cameras are allowed. They sent an email out to everyone that cameras weren't allowed, but once we got in and actually walked inside the Opera House, they said it was okay to take photos of some of the displays in there. They've got so many artifacts on loan from the Walt Disney Family Museum in there, all kinds of Disney concept artwork and artifacts from Walt Disney's life and from the life of the studio, and all these different amazing things in there. And then, to my surprise, once we walked into the actual theater, they said, yeah, you're fine to take video as long as you don't use a video lighting or a flash. Like, what? And so the show began. I have to say, it was kind of weird hearing Bob Iger's voice in there narrating the show, but the show is absolutely fantastic. A great summary of the history of Walt Disney told in his own words, and what I can tell you was definitely not AI voice, right? It was real recordings of Walt Disney from all different periods in Walt's history, and lots of different interviews he gave that are held by the studio archives. I mean, a really touching, beautiful show. But of course, the entire theater just got silent, waiting with bated breath for the big moment, and finally, the moment came. The screen started to go up, and Walt Disney himself appeared. It was kind of hard to hear, the volume was low, but spoiler alert, this is what we saw from Walt Disney.
When asked to name his greatest reward, Walt's reply was surprisingly humble.
Well, my greatest reward, I think, is that I've been able to build this wonderful organization, and also to have the public appreciate and accept what I've done all these years. That is a great reward. But all individuals are different. I had a brother who I really envied because he was a mailman, but he was the one that had all the fun. He had himself a trailer, and he used to go off and go fishing, and he didn't worry about payrolls, that story, he said, had picture grocers or anything. And he was the happy one. I always said he's the smart Disney. You know, I was stopped one day when the little boy asked, do you draw Mickey Mouse? And I had to admit I do not draw anymore. Well, then you think up all the jokes and ideas. No, I said, I don't do that. Finally, he looked at me and said, Mr. Disney, just what do you do? Well, I said, sometimes I think of myself as a little bee. I go from one area of the studio to another and gather pollen and sort of stimulate everybody. I guess that's the job I do. You know, there's a lot of satisfaction in developing ideas into realities, but there's really no secret about our approach. We keep moving forward, opening up new doors, doing new things, because we're curious. And curiosity keeps leading us down new paths. We're always exploring and experimenting. we're interested in doing things that are fun, in bringing pleasure and especially laughter to people. But I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing. It was all started by a mouse.
All right, you have now just seen what I saw in there. And as we were trying to exit the Opera House, everybody that had been in attendance for our showing was all asking each other the same thing. So what'd you think? You know, before the reveal, expectations were so high. Then after the reveal, I feel like expectations were so low. It doesn't look like Walt. It looks nothing like him. And maybe those lowered expectations helped. Maybe they did a little tweaking on the figure or the paint or the lighting between the preview day and today. And I'm still kind of processing. I'm still figuring out what exactly I think. But I gotta say, when it was all said and done, now that I've had a little time to think about it, I actually think it came off okay, right? First of all, let's address the elephant in the room. The actual Walt animatronic, yeah, those up close from down low angle, zoomed in sort of initial preview images, they didn't quite look right. I admit that. I was a little bit like, oh, I don't know. But sitting in the dead center of the theater and looking at it from a distance, the appropriate distance, right in the middle of the theater, he looked pretty good. He looked like Walt Disney. In fact, the little girl behind me, who's the target audience if we're going to teach the future generations about Walt, actually said as the show starts, she goes, is that really him? Which like immediately put things into perspective for me, right? Like, oh, you know what? This isn't about what we expect out of the show. This is about teaching future generations, especially kids, who Walt Disney was and why his name is literally on the map here. And so I'll say this, they've still got a little room to adjust the lighting or the makeup or paint on Walt, or maybe in the future update the sculpt a little bit or something like that. But actually, first impression is just a first impression. I've only seen it once after all. I thought it looked and sounded like Walt Disney. It's not perfect. Like I said, they've got some room to tweak things, change things a little bit. Hopefully over the years it'll get better and better. But if, like me, one of the things you really care about is preserving Walt Disney's legacy and who he was, look at this, I'm gonna keep this wristband forever. Like I said, there was a little girl behind me who was like, is that really him? And I was just thinking about all those future generations of kids who really have no idea about Walt Disney, the man. And if they're never gonna get up to the Walt Disney Family Museum in San Francisco, which by the way is the ultimate way to get to know Walt Disney, this show was pretty good. That's my first impression. I'm sure the more times I see the show, I'll see things that I'm like, ah, man, why'd they do that? And I'm sure I'll see more things to love about the show. I gotta tell you this, the photos in there and some of the early private Disney home movie footage, as a fan of Walt Disney, the man, and the history behind the whole company, I thought was absolutely like breathtakingly fascinating. I loved that whole element of it. Animatronic Walt overall, really good first impression. Did you like it?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, because the expectations went way down from the preview images. We were like, oh no, we're gonna see Walt. Like, are we gonna have our hearts broken? Or are we gonna be dancing in the streets with delight? So what did you think from where we were sitting?
I thought from where we were sitting it looked pretty good.
He looked a lot better than he looked on the internet, right?
Yes, definitely. Like, since we were sitting like farther back, I think it was like a better angle.
Oh yeah, much better angle. Yeah, like those low preview angles like this made Walt look very, very strange. But with the naked eye, he looked amazing. Now, I haven't got home yet and watched the footage that you just watched. So I might watch the footage back and go, yeah, he looks really weird on camera. Maybe Walt's just not photogenic in that way or something. But in person, with the proper lighting, the full show lighting, and with an audience and everything, and sitting in the middle of the theater, he looked pretty good. And I cannot help but think that whatever you think about there being a robot Walt in principle, Mecha Walt in there, and unfortunately, no, he did not shoot laser beams out of his eyes. I was a little bit disappointed by that, but whatever you think about robot Walt, the fact that this is going to be shown to generations of children who are now going to get a peek behind the scenes at all the hard work and the failures and the dreams and all those things that went into not just creating Disneyland, but creating the empire of the Walt Disney Company, creating these characters, these special moments, with an emphasis on Walt Disney, the man, and underscoring the fact that he was indeed a real person. Well, no matter what the sculpt looks like, I think that is something to celebrate. But don't get me wrong, when I first saw those preview images, like my heart sank in my chest. I was like, oh no. He doesn't look like Walt. What does he look like? He looks like, somebody actually told me like one of the first texts I saw that morning was like, why'd they put that out in the Woo animatronic in there? You know, and people were posting like My Pillow memes or saying he looked more like Tom Hanks and Saving Mr. Banks and all kinds of stuff. And I was just like, well, I'm gonna reserve judgment until I see it. And Allie brought up a really interesting point.
I think that part that everyone keeps seeing online looks weird. Like when he first came out, I was like, oh, he looks really good. And then when it got to that portion of him
That
talking,
specific segment.
yeah, then I was like, okay, he does look a little weird.
A little strict, because that's when he first turns and kind of faces everyone. He's not leaning back.
He's like smiling. He doesn't look like him.
Yeah, like when we saw him come out at the beginning, there's a whole giant chunk of him talking before that part that everybody saw online.
Yeah.
And I think the animation, the sculpt, everything looks a lot better. The lighting looked a lot better. And then during that part, you're right, I noticed like, oh, that's the part where he kind of looks a little bit funny.
Yeah.
Where he's kind of wide-eyed. Like his eyebrows are all the way up.
The eyebrows go up and he's just like squinty.
So, but then it's weird that they chose that as like the first reveal, because that's kind of the only part where he looks the way he did online, where I went, oh, that's the guy I saw on the internet the other day. The rest of the time, he looked a lot more like Walt Disney. They definitely nailed the mouth, and the motions were really good, and the voice sounded a lot less weird in person. Although I must say, the volume was really, really quiet on Walt. So they were trying to make it like he was like talking on stage, and so like you were feeling like you're actually in an auditorium where the real Walt Disney. I don't think that works. Like I feel like they needed to crank it up. Give Walt one of those Britney Spears mics or something like that. But you're right. During that one part, that's the only time he really looks like that. I would say not good. The rest of the time, I kind of believed it.
Yeah, I agree.
Did you hear that little girl behind us that was like, is that the real Walt Disney?
Yeah,
like,
so
that's who it's for. You got to think about that. Like for the children of the world to see and know. And there's a lot in there about his early failures and struggles. A lot of what I was talking about in Kansas City. And like that's the important part, the inspiring part of Walt Disney. It's not that he invented Mickey Mouse and got rich and built Disneyland. It's that this is a creative person whose family struggled and lost their homes and moved around, and he had to work at 3 in the morning delivering papers in the ice and the snow, and all the failures and setbacks over and over again in Hollywood, and betting the farm every time to make this stuff. And that part shines through the whole show. I don't know, I'm so on Bob Iger's narration. I feel like one day that could probably be replaced, maybe when he leaves or something. Not that it was bad, I just wasn't expecting it, so it kind of threw me off. But otherwise, I gotta say the show overall, I think is a net positive.
Yeah, it was good.
There's definitely stuff to criticize, don't get me wrong. But I think you'll be pleasantly surprised when and if you see it in person. I'm sure people will be live streaming it all day tomorrow and whatever. Oh, yeah. But I thought, you know, since it'll be a while till our 70th anniversary video is up, and by the time you're seeing this, we're running around the park again tomorrow morning, getting all 70th on things. Why not invite you along to our little preview of Walt Disney, A Magical Life. So there it was. That's what I thought. It's my first impression. Like I said, maybe I watch it tomorrow and I go, oh no, I was wrong, I hate it. Or maybe I watch it again tomorrow and I go, no, it's even more magical than I remembered. I don't know. I was just so stunned. I was shook, as the kids say. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see what the deeper, longer lasting impression is, but that is my honest first impression. If I hated it, I would have told you. If I far and away loved it and it was the greatest thing ever, I would have told you. I'm just sort of still, I guess, a little bit in shock. But I can say this, the overall show, the theme of it, all that is fantastic. The people who worked on this did a great job. You might even say they did their duty. Now for the moment, since we got to get back up at 5:30 in the morning to get ready and head down here for some 70th anniversary action, we've done our duty too, which means time to go home and sleep well. Remember to join us on Patreon. We got the merch store at randomland.com. See you next time. They literally just rolled up that door while I was standing out there. I am literally the first person to walk into this. Dude, I am very nervous about this. We're about to meet up with our hosts that are gonna take us into the preview of Mecha Walt in there. I'm nervous, I don't know what to think. I've seen the preview pictures, the preview videos. I wanna know, what does it look like in person with my own eyes?